Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Nazia Naved. Today we will be discussing Unit 42, that is Migration to West Asia.
Nazia, 1 minute. I'm just doing this online thing. Just
Okay. Sure, sir.
Okay. One minute. Hello, everyone. I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So today we have with us Nazia. She is going to talk on West Asian migration. So to introduce her, her brief introduction is just like this. Nazia Naved holds a doctorate degree from Center for West Asian Study, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. Her research focuses on Indian diaspora as an emerging factor in India's foreign policy towards the largest regional and trading bloc, the Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC. Her writing takes into account an interdisciplinary perspective to understand the Indian diaspora linkages with India's foreign policy through the prism of remittances, political economy, of soft power and diplomacy. She has completed her graduation in political science from the Kamla Nehru College, University of Delhi, masters in political science from Jamia Millia Islamia, and MPhil in West Asian Studies from the same university. So without delaying, I'll ask Nazia to please continue. And Nazia, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Nazia Naved. Today we will be discussing Unit 42, that is Migration to West Asia. So let me begin with what constitutes West Asia. There are 12 nations that makes up the West Asian countries. They are Bahrain, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Syria, United Arab Emirates, and Yemen. Please have a look at the map. I have encircled these 12 nations. So out of these 12 nations, only 6 nations, that is Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates holds the majority of the migrants in West Asia. These nations collectively makes up the Gulf Cooperation Council. Indian migration to these nations served a variety of goals, which had an impact on both the home country and the host country. In the home country, it is visible in terms of the remittance transfer, and in the host country in terms of infrastructural development of the region. So, migrations of India to the West Asia. So, hello?
Yes.
Sure, sir.
Mhm. Nadia, you are not audible.
Sir, there is an issue in my connection. Just a second.
Okay.
So there is some connectivity issue.
No worries.
Sir, is my screen visible?
Yes, it is visible.
So is it the migration of India to West Asia?
Your PPT is showing around 8.5 millions of the over 31 millions NRI. PPT number 5.
PPT number 5. Just a second.
Sorry for the technical glitch. Please be patient. Actually, some technical issue has occurred in Nazia's connection, so we can wait for a moment. In online thing, it is quite possible that such thing can happen at any time. So, Nirmal and Sonal, please have some patience. So is trying to connect. And others who are listening to us on YouTube, please. It's just because of her technical connectivity, she is not able to continue with her lecture, but soon she is going to join.
Sir, I'm not able to share my screen.
Okay. But you are a
Can I,
co-host.
yeah, can I continue without sharing my screen?
No worry, no worry. You can continue.
Okay, okay. So the migration of India to West Asia. The exchange of economic, diplomatic, and literally philosophical and religious knowledge is a major factor in the interactions between India and the West Asia. Once India gained its independence, there were primarily two waves of Indian workers' immigration. The first came soon after many industrialized nations gained their independence, including USA and Europe. And the second was in the middle of the 1970s when West Asian nations saw an economic oil boom. After the rise in the oil prices in 1973, there was a significant influx of Indian laborers to the Gulf, which was then the subject of extensive development projects. Between 1970s and 1975, the Gulf saw an almost 200 increase in the number of unskilled workers from India and Pakistan. A few decades later, during the first Gulf War, there was an increase in the number of Indian employees to replace those who have been expelled from Arab nations for not completely supporting the campaign to drive Iraqi forces out of Kuwait. The second largest global migratory corridor runs across the Gulf area. Around 8.5 million of the Indian 35 around 8.5 million of the over 31 million NRIs from India are thought to be employed in the Gulf. In the Gulf states, where the percentage of non-nationals in the labor force is among the highest in the world, India makes up nearly 30% of the expatriate workforce. But however, the number of Indians in the regions has declined since 2015 to 2019. In 2015, the total number of Indians accounted for approximately 8 lakhs, whereas in 2019, the numbers have declined to approximately 3 lakhs. So what are the reasons for the same? There are four reasons. The first reason is shrinking pay gap. The second is nationalization policies. Third is rising work permits, renewal fees and taxes. And the fourth is rising prices for utilities and basic products. So now let's discuss why has West Asia become the destination of many Indians. The surge in employment opportunities in the West Asian countries following the oil boom attracted millions of labor migrants from India. Indian laborers were given lucrative work in the region to improve their living standards since the opportunity and pay were higher than in their own nation. And the long-term employment enabled them to support themselves and they left behind families. So what is the profiles of Indians in West Asia? So there are mainly two classes of Indian immigrants in the Gulf. The first is the highly skilled and semi and low skilled workers. The second is professionals and entrepreneurs. So there have been a change in the pattern when it's come to the regional pattern of Indian labor migration. Workers from Kerala makes up the majority of the workforce that migrated from India to the Gulf during the early stage of labor migration. But recently, Uttar Pradesh and Bihar have emerged as a top source state for labor immigration. Higher skilled and better educated laborers may be seen migrating from Kerala, but migration from Uttar Pradesh is mostly driven by low-skilled laborers. States like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar are seeing a shift in the pattern of labor migration from India to the Gulf nations, which formerly occurred in states like Kerala, Telangana, and Tamil Nadu. So what is the workplace situation like in the Gulf? Since many Indians are moving to the West Asian countries, then what is the workplace situation like? The majority of the Indian migrant populations are employed in low-skilled jobs like construction, hospitality, and domestic workers. In terms of number of domestic workers in the GCC, out of the total 39 lakhs, 16 lakhs were female and rest are male. The employment in the Gulf is regulated through the kafala system. This is termed as modern day slavery. Under the kafala system, the workers are tied to the employers, which in turn exercise full control, and it led to abuse and exploitation. So in one of the surveys done in 2012, the survey mentions the difficulties faced by the migrant laborers at the workplace. So the data reveals that the migrants face difficulties under the kafala system with issues and aspects like employment conditions, low pay, poor housing conditions, lack of family life, lack of vacations, and other difficulties. In most of the cases, it is the employer who holds the passport of the employee. This system renders him to abuse and exploitation. So what is the economy of the West Asian countries? The economy of the West Asian countries revolves around oil. The oil prices, the rise in the oil prices and production scale and national populations employed have turned the GCC into a pure rentier state. The Gulf rentiers are typically categorized as distributive states because oil rent is occurred directly by the government, which then distribute to its citizens through contract gifts, interest-free loans, and subsidies. The above Arab nationals are also employed in the public sector jobs, whereas the non-nationals are employed in the private sector. The socio-economic and cultural impact of Indian migrants in the Gulf. The family migrants, the society, and the home state in India all experience substantial economic and social effects as a result of migration to West Asia. Throughout the years between 1990s and the present, the Indian diaspora profile has evolved. The construction and transportation industries, where the majority of the Indian workers are engaged in the early years. After 1980s, white collars employment became much more popular. Indians are also active in commercial operations in the UAE, Kuwait, Oman, and other countries. For example, Malhotras in Kuwait is a good example. Doctors, financiers, attorneys, educators, and accountants also makes up the sizable portion of the workforce. In the economic domain, the Gulf NRI remittance has been a boost for the Indian economy. It has helped India during the balance of payment crisis. The inward remittances has increased since 1974 till present. As per the World Bank data, India receives Just a second. I am able to connect my PPT. In the economic domain, the NRI Gulf remittances have been a boost for the Indian economy. It has helped India during the balance of payment crisis. The inward remittances have increased since 1974 till present. As per the World Bank data, India received an all-time high of USD 79 billion in remittances in 2018, followed by China, Mexico, Philippines, and Egypt. The Gulf region accounts for more than half of the remittance to India, with UAE alone accounting for 20% of all the remittances in 2018. The US ranked second overall in terms of sources, with UK, Malaysia, Canada, Hong Kong, and Australia rounding out of the top 10. The four major states, Kerala, Maharashtra, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu, according to the Reserve Bank of India, receives two-thirds of the remittances. The Indian migration to the Gulf not only helps the migrant population to improve the living standards of the left behind family members in their home countries, even though the majority of the Gulf workers transfer their money through legal routes, a sizable portion also use Hawala and other illicit methods to transfer their money. Indian diaspora in the Gulf is also an agent of social cultural dissemination. They are helping in projecting a positive image of India abroad. The Indian entertainment industry and radio stations have increased their footholds in the Gulf region. As a soft power, the influence of Indian diaspora is visible in the field of culture, language, tradition, customs, yoga, cuisines, and entertainment industry. The policies in the destination countries towards the migrant. The employment in the Gulf is regulated through the kafala system. The system ties the employer to the employee, which in turn exercises full control on him in terms of restricted mobility, confiscation of passport, low working and living conditions. For the migrant workers, there are three key restrictions that are part of the system. These include changing a job without the consent with the consent of the employer, quitting a job with the permission of the employer, ability to leave the country with the permission of the employer. In any case, the migrant workers is withheld for any of the above stated restriction, the consequences are major. They could either be deported back or spend time behind the bar. The low wage workers are the one who are more exploited the most due to the system. A combination of kafala system and workers' exploitation in assessing their rights leads to the abuse of workers' rights in the Gulf countries. The second policies have been the Arabization or indigenization policies that also makes the workers' life more vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. The Arabization was particularly evident in the monarchical Gulf state. Oman began indigenization in the late 1980s, and Saudi Arabia is also emphasizing it through its Nitakat program. The Gulf states have long recognized their reliance on foreign expatriate laborers. Thus, indigenization will help these countries to reduce their dependence on foreign aid and integrate them into the economy. However, countries like Bahrain and Qatar, whose expatriates makes up roughly 80 to 85% of the entire population, may only impose minimal indigenization. On the other hand, Saudi Arabia has the largest population in the GCC, with a huge number of people expected to enter the labor force in future decades. Furthermore, indigenization is also aimed at the private sector, which has previously relied nearly solely on the expatriate labor. With the implementation of the Nitakat by Saudi Arabia has resulted in many Indian employees returning home. It has also allowed the legalization and regularization of the workers' permit visas, which would be beneficial in the long run. So what are the policies of Indian government? The Indian government has introduced two categories for granting visas. The first is the immigration check required, and second is immigration check not required. The ECR category visas are marked for either those people who have education level below 10th standard, or for those who migrate to selected countries which are deemed to be dangerous. Owing to the increasing number of cases of mistreatment of migrant workers in West Asia, several West Asian countries have been put under ECR category. All the countries put under the ECR categories are UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, Kuwait, Bahrain, Malaysia, Libya, Jordan, Yemen, Sudan, Afghanistan, Indonesia, Syria, Lebanon, Thailand, and Iran. Any person willing to migrate to these countries needs to obtain immigration clearance from the Director of Immigration. This is done in order to protect the workers from exploitation by the employee in the foreign land. Likewise, the government of India has also put restrictions on the operation of commercial recruiting agencies in India in order to stop any more instances of workplace harassment. The Indian government has also initiated several policies and programs to facilitate the migration process and to secure their protection to strengthen the Indian migration bond. These policies range from e-migrate system to Pravasiya Kaushal Vikas Yojana to pre-departure orientation and training, overseas workers resource centers, migration resource centers and media campaign to Pravasiya Bharatiya Bima Yojana, Mahatma Gandhi Pravasiya Suraksha Yojana, Indian Community Welfare Fund, open house sessions by Indian missions and posts, and immigration of women for employment in ECR countries. So the number of Indian workers granted immigration clearance from 2011 to 2017. The graph clearly represents that the Indian government has made granting immigration clearance difficult in order to curb the issue of migrant abuse and exploitation, with only 3,91,000 clearance granted in 2017 as compared to 8 lakhs in 2014. The issues related to women workers. Women workforce constitute approximately 49% of the total outward migration in relation to men. The women workforce face discrimination in the realms of sex, race, occupation, wages, nationality, and migration status. So when I say sex, it's the women worker versus the men workers. In terms of race, the color and ethnicity in labor market situation, where the principle of equal treatment and opportunity is not applied, mainly in the case of women migrant workers belonging to a certain ethnic or racial group, vis-a-vis the racial and ethnic origin of majority of the population. Occupation-wise, performing jobs where they are not formally considered as workers. Wages, performing jobs where the principle of equal pay for equal work is not applied. And nationality, foreign workers vis-a-vis the nationals, and migration status, undocumented vis-a-vis the documented. Human trafficking issues. The kafala system, which is practiced in the region, has been directly related to the method by which migrant laborers are recruited, transported, and subjected to exploitation, mostly through illegal recruiters or channels. With the GCC, the Indian government places more of an emphasis on fighting human trafficking and slavery than on working conditions. So what are the other challenges? COVID-19 posed a great challenge to the presence of Indian laborers in the Gulf. It has resulted in job loss, salary reductions, and income loss, which is wage theft, for low and semi-skilled migrant workers. When an employer fails to pay the employee the wages they are entitled to, it's called the wage theft. The second is the nationalization policies. The high share of expatriate workers in the Gulf Cooperation Council economies has been a major source of significant demographic imbalances. Such enacting policies aimed at replacing the expatriate workers with natives. Implementing these policies was not easy due to the mismatch between the type of jobs held by the large number of expatriates. For example, Kuwait has decided to nationalize 20% of its employment in the private sector. What is the current demographic profiles of Indians in the Gulf? As per the data, you can clearly see the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has witnessed a five-fold jump in the number of Indian moving there for employment by recruiting the highest number of labor force among the Gulf countries in 2020. Kuwait is the second Gulf countries to recruit highest number of Indians, and the least one is Bahrain. So before jumping on to the conclusion, I would like to mention some of the data, like the population in 2018. As per this data, you can clearly see that the overseas Indian in UAE accounts for the highest, with 31 lakhs overseas Indians, followed by Saudi Arabia with 28 lakhs Indians in 2018, total accounting for 85 lakhs, which is 8.5 million. This particular graph shows that there has been a growing trend in the number of migrants in the Gulf countries since 1990s. We can say that the demographic composition of the Indians in the regions has changed since 1990 to 2019. But when we look at the data from 2015 to 2019, we can clearly see that the number of Indians in the regions has declined. In 2015, the total Indian accounted for approximately 8 lakhs, whereas in 2019, the number has just declined to approximately 3 lakhs. This particular graph clearly shows that the Indian states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, Rajasthan, Punjab, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Kerala, Odisha are the major labor sourcing states to the Gulf region. So since I told about that the majority of the Indian population are employed in the low skilled workers like in construction, hospitality, and domestic workers. So these are the number of domestic workers in the GCC by sex in 2000. The data has been tabulated in 2016. So the data clearly shows that the female laborers are also migrating in large numbers in the GCC along with the male migrants. Out of the total 39 lakhs domestic workers, 16 lakhs are female workforce and rest are males. So the difficulties faced by migrant laborers at the workplace under the kafala system. This survey was done in 2012. So the survey clearly reveals that 4% of the migrant think that their employment conditions are difficult. 36% difficulties faced by the low pay workers. 3% is the poor housing condition, 26% is lack of family life, 3% talks about the lack of vacations, and 5% like other difficulties. And there are 23% of the Indians that says that they don't have any difficulties to face in the Gulf region. So who holds the passport? If you can clearly see the data, it is the employer who holds the passport of the employee. This also has been the survey done in 2012, which shows that around 86% of the employer, it is 86% that the passport is held by the employee. The system renders him to abuse and exploitation. So in conclusion, we can clearly say is that India shares historical relations with the countries of West Asia, beginning with the 17th century. Indian communities in the regions have witnessed tremendous growth from small traders, merchants, now bankers, importers, exporters, doctors, nurses, communities employed in blue-collar jobs. The oil exploration of 1973 in the Gulf region has opened new avenues for the Indian laborers to earn a better livelihood in the region. That has not only improved the living standard of their family back home, but has also helped the Indian economy through remittance transfer. Currently, the Gulf region holds approximately 9 million Indian diaspora. The Indian immigrant in West Asia is also facing some labor-related issues, for which the government of India has been concluding international bilateral agreement to address these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazia. Maybe the students have some question for you.
Sure, sir.
Abha is there, Nirmal is there, Sonal. Abha, you want to know anything or you want to ask anything?
Sir, what I wanted to know, the Gulf migration is quite high, and my ma'am also mentioned that there are different types of migrants. But the Gulf countries like UAE have said about 20% is going to be the local. So, what type of initiatives have they taken so that the migrants can be replaced by the local people? Are they taking some initiative or what is the
Abha, your connectivity is low, I think, because I don't know if Nazia is able to get you properly or not, because your voice is breaking actually.
Right, sir, because I'm just traveling back. I'll just repeat my question. I wanted to know two things. One is the Gulf countries have initiated a program where they are wanting to hire 20% of local people. So have they taken certain steps for stealing their people, or they are making the skill sets which the Indian migrants are taking as redundant. That's one thing. The second thing was about the wage gap. Is there any wage gap between the local recruit and the migrant recruit?
Nazia? Hello, Nazia, are you there? Hello, Nazia?
I think we've lost her. Sir.
Maybe because earlier also she faced some connectivity issue. So Abha, can you just write this question so I can forward it to her so she can reply?
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Uh,
Sure, sir. Just do.
Nirmal, you want to know anything? Actually, she is in much better condition to answer your question, Abha. So I'll just forward it.
Right, sir.
I'll just this your question to her. So she will reply to you in mail, or she will reply to Sahu sir. So he can put the thing in group. Okay.
Right, sir.
Thank you very much, everyone. And if Nazia is there, so Nazia, you can reply to Abha's question fully. I think she is having some connection issue. So, okay, Abha, thank you very much. And thank you, Nazia, for your wonderful lecture. So, we'll meet on next Saturday. Okay. Bye bye.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.